right, how y'all doing?
Good.
Did y'all like them burritos?
Yes.
All right, don't fall asleep. All right, this is our education panel, and my name is Frank Oliver. I'm gonna moderate the panel. A couple things is I'm gonna allow our panelists to introduce themselves and to give us their understanding on education, where it is now and where it's going, education industry. And then after they do that, then we'll go into some questions. And then somewhat, probably about 15 minutes before we're done, then we'll allow you to ask some questions. What I ask of you is that you first give us your name and where you're from, and then give us a question. Not a summary, not a preaching message, we just need a question. And if you do that, that we can be able to make sure that you have some dialogue with our panelists. Now, my rules is this: the energy you give is the energy that they receive is what they can give back out to you. It's a Saturday. If you're in education, you probably spend at least 100 hours this week, because usually people in education never go to sleep. It's 24 hours a day. You read this, and so anything that you do related to education, you're always doing it. So to take their Saturday out, to come out here and to impart it to us, I think is important. And so we ask you to make sure that you give them high energy and to push it that way. You're gonna feel good. Otherwise, the burritos is gonna hit you. It's gonna get real. But you ain't gotta worry about this panel, because I promise you, there's gonna be something that's gonna be said that's gonna blow your mind. So please make sure you got your pens out. Instagram this. I mean, I'm trying to tell you, you're gonna hear something, especially out of Sharaj. You're gonna hear something out of this guy that's gonna make you understand that it's real in the street. So, all right. So we're gonna start with Stephanie here. Stephanie, if you just let us know where you from, let us know what you feel about education.
I don't even want it. Leave good.
Stephanie, it's your day, okay? It's your moment, your time. Go ahead.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Stephanie Castellanos. I actually grew up down the street, not too far, in Inglewood, California. A lot of you hear of Inglewood. Anybody from Inglewood here? Okay, but you heard about it? Okay. People usually say like Inglewood, always up to no good, right? No, we're up to a lot of good. So I grew up in Inglewood. Since then, I actually attended UCLA. I'm a first gen. I'm a first generation student. My parents immigrated here from Mexico. And yes, okay. So representation. And I am an edupreneur. So what that means is that I am an entrepreneur, and I've launched my own nonprofit called the Coalition for Diverse Educators. So really quick, how many of you have had a teacher that you remember right now, just sitting there? Raise your hand. Okay. So you're going to talk to a teacher. You're definitely going to talk to some teachers here. But what I do is on the other end, which is how do we get better, more competent, culturally responsive teachers into the classroom. So what does that mean is that my organization is focused in 20 different states right now. And what I do is to get more teachers of color to teach in urban communities. And so that's my job right now. And I also I'm a motivational speaker, and I do equity-based trainings called woke shops at college campuses. And so we talk about really create sacred spaces for students of color to engage in real, honest conversations of what's happening in their community, but also really try to understand ways that they can impact their community and already know that everything they have is already in their hands. You just have to really understand how to cultivate that. So that's what I do as a career coach as well.
Oh, yeah. My name is Shafali Mystery. I'm from Southern California. I actually grew up in the Corona Riverside area. And I moved to Long Beach back in 2003, and Long Beach is my heart, my home.
Yes.
So yeah, I went to Cal State Long Beach. I actually went to Riverside Community College first. I went to school for drawing and painting. I'm an artist. I went to grad school for, I did a master's in public practice, which at other schools is called social practice. So it's fusing the arts with social justice and community organizing. So most of my career has been in the arts in higher education and sort of trying to figure out where those two things meet. But when I was in school, I was in student government. That's how I met Frank.
Yes.
And that actually sort of launched my career as I know it. And so where I sort of ended up, I was working in advancement, which is alumni relations, fundraising, communications. That's like the umbrella term for that. But about a year ago, I got asked to come to the CSU Office of the Chancellor and work there. And my title is Manager of Constituent Engagement, which just kind of covers all manner of sins. But I do system-wide alumni relations, and I'll go into that a little bit more later and why I really feel that that's significant. But I do alumni relations for the CSU system. I work with the CSU Foundation, which works on, among other things, grants for student education programs and scholarships. And I work with professional development fundraisers in the CSU. I'm also, as part of my art practice, I'm part of a collective called Michelada Think Tank. And we are all artists of color. We organize conversations, and we have micheladas. We call it social lubrication. But we, have conversations about what issues are facing people of color in the arts, in education, and beyond. Lots of conversations about why our faculty and administrators don't look like us, what we can do to change that. So.
It's your turn, my man.
Good afternoon. My name is Sherrod Sean Moore, more affectionately known as Terry Gurley's son. I know the reason I go by that moniker is because when I was younger, I was probably the worst kid you ever wanted to meet. And anytime something went wrong in the neighborhood, the community, church, school, that's Terry Gurley's son. They always talked about me and referred to me under my mother's name. So as I've gotten older, I wear that as a badge, and I live my life to honor that. I am an educator. I've been in education for 15 years. Started off teaching algebra, coaching a little bit. I've advanced to move into, I'm the director of track and field and cross country at Long Beach Jordan High School, as well as the on-site rover on campus. I go back and forth for a long time. I went back and forth with what my mission is. If you grow up rough and tough and in bad situations, you live your life to prove people wrong. I'm going to show you. You live your life to show people. And the first half of my life, I lived to show people. I was always too small. I was always too slow. I didn't look good enough. I didn't dress well enough. Even though I tested at a genius level, I wasn't smart enough. I was never good enough to be in many arenas, and whether it be education or sports. So I worked my way up really hard. I worked really hard. I played professional. I went to the University of Northern Iowa. From there, I ended up playing arena football for the Quad City Steamrollers. Played a season of professional football with the Minnesota Vikings. And you would think that you graduate college and you make some money, that you have arrived. And with all of those things that were going on, I still wasn't satisfied. I still wasn't satisfied. I got hurt. I came back to California to rehab. I'm from Long Beach. I'm from East Side Long Beach. There is a difference. It just is, man. You got to know the area. And came back home to train with one of my high school coaches and rehab. And I had an uncle who suggested that I try education. It was like, I can't use all the words that I used with him. But when I talk about this story, I have to give you his voice. Because we shot, he said, Shine, what you need to do, you need to go on down to that job over there to the school district. You need to go down there and try to teach some of them kids, man. They need to know, them little black boys need to know what it is to make it. I said, do you know how bad those kids are? I was one of those kids. I ain't done with them. I'm not trying to be sucking little kids out at the elementary or high school. It's just not going to happen. He went on and on and on and on. And then at the time, my district really needed people to fill in, and subs were making like $250 a day. And I was like, what? I can say I'm probably the only teacher that got into education for the money at the time. I have since wanted to rescind that leap of faith many times. So I became a teacher. Well, I took the CBS and then CSET, and I got more interested in the classroom and so forth. And I got a cool sub gig. I had a sub gig. And, they liked the way that I ran the classroom. And so the principal asked me if I wanted to stay on. I'm like, I don't know. I got workouts in the morning. I just do this twice a week. She said, well, you know, we really, same sentiment, we really need young black male teachers, and the young boys need to see somebody of your stature that's made it. And she talked me into it. Her name was Dr. Avery Hall. And she stayed on me, and I was good in my job. I wanted to do well. And I don't give kids regular detention. I don't believe in sitting there looking at the wall, copying out a dictionary, dumb stuff. I don't believe in that. I believe that you need to learn from your mistakes, and then we can move on. And you won't make the same mistakes. So I had a kid that had detention. He was a big kid. He was huge. He was like 6'2", 225 pounds. He was in 8th grade, and he intimidated everybody on campus except for me. And my punishment to him, or my deal was, you had to do these 5 math problems, so at least I knew while you were talking in class, you were paying attention, and you could go. So he's working. I'm coming to the end, guys. He's working. And he just stopped getting it. He's just not getting it. And so I said, do you know what this is? Yes. Do you know what that is? Yes. Now do this and this and that. And I walked him through step by step. It was a simple problem. I think he was working on the distributed property. And he said, I said, okay, good. He said, what's next? I said, there's nothing next. I said, that's it. He said, that's it? I said, yeah. He said, oh man, that was easy. This is a kid who, this is a classroom who had 2 credential teachers quit in 2 months and 3 long-term subs quit, and a series of day-to-day. They were running teachers out left and right. And he said, that's easy. As a teacher, as a person, that gave me such a high that I pushed my whole educational career to have that aha moment and having every student that I dealt with. But even still, I didn't know what my place was. Like, okay, I'm gonna change kids, but how do I change kids? What do I do to get these kids motivated? What do I do to get them to understand how important it is to get a quality education? And 2 years ago, I took this position, this head coach position at Long Beach, Jordan. And the principal there was my principal in middle school, who actually happened to kick me out of middle school, who hired me at my first high school teaching job at Long Beach Poly. He's the man in Long Beach. His name is Sean Ashley. He's the man. His family, they just deep in Long Beach in education. He's sitting out on the basketball courts during lunchtime, and he's sweeping up the court. He has a dustpan here and a broom here. Sweep. Kids say, oh, mother so-and-so this, F that, dropping the N-bomb, which I hate to hear, saying all kind of stuff that you just don't say in front of your mom, your pastor, a criminal even. You just kind of keep those words to yourself. And they was letting them all fly, and he was sitting there with a smile on his face, sweeping. And so I walk by, I'm going into my office, and I say, hey, Ashley, I see you got a demotion, ha ha ha. He goes, oh, Sherrod. He laughs at me. And then I come back out again because I have the utmost respect for this man. I'm like, don't you have people to do this for you? Like, you're the principal. And he says, Sherrod, they deserve a clean basketball court. He said, they deserve a clean school. At that moment, I realized that my purpose as an educator and as a coach and as a speaker and so forth was to get people to understand and like what they deserve and not to accept the things that I can give them.
My name is Jake Aguas, and I'm a professor of management currently over at Biola University. I teach in the MBA program there and at Chapman University. Actually, I'm a first-generation Latino myself. My parents are from Ecuador, so very, very blessed to be here. As my sister over there went to UCLA, I had the opportunity to get in there and really make a difference. And you know, I'm just here to tell you something as I'm thinking about things. And you know, we can all remember, you know, when she asked the question, if you remember a teacher that impacted your life, and you can. You don't always remember who won the Stanley Cup in 2000, Who won the World Series in 2005? Those are statistics that we have for a moment in time. But what really makes a difference is the people that have poured themselves into you. And that's what we do, It's because we love, and we're not looking necessarily for a financial reward, but the satisfaction of being able to serve the next generation of students, of peers, and help just, build community. I was an executive with JP Morgan Chase for 15 years. And in that space, I learned a lot about servant leadership and what that meant. And it's interesting, because when you're in the business world, many times people say, servant leadership? What do you mean? I'm not going to serve anybody. If you're an executive, you're there to have people serve you. And you're the boss. And I learned that the best leaders out there are the ones that demonstrate humility. They seek to put themselves behind their teams. They're not in the back of the chariot while the horses are going. They're in front pulling and moving them along. Servant leadership. When I look at the next generation of students, and people ask me all the time, I do my side hustle is I'm an organizational consultant. Businesses call me up and say, something's broken. Can you fix it? And many times when I'm dealing with millennials, there's 3 things that I end up recommending to students to be successful. They'll say, you know what, Jake, what's gonna help differentiate me amongst my peers? There's so much competition. What am I going to do to stand out? And I tell them 3 things. Number 1 is don't leave it to just one internship while you're in college. Get 2, get 3. Go on a study abroad for 2 weeks. You don't have to go to London for a full semester to study. But if you can have a cultural experience, even a trip philanthropically to another country, we got one close by. It'll make a difference. Get that underneath your belt so you can actually firsthand feel that humility, right? The second thing is develop your emotional intelligence. Okay, you might think, what's that? It's your ability to be aware of yourself and your emotions and the people around you and how to interact with them in a way that connects with them. Building relationships. Very, very important. Okay? And the third one, be the best at what you're going to do. If you're sweeping basketball courts, you make sure you're the best that you're going to be. If you're opening the door to a retail store that you're working over the holidays for a job that you need to help pay for school, when you put that key in the door, you put it in the best way you can, you turn it the best way you can, and you give it 100%. You be a relentless learner in your life. And the last little piece I'll tell you is always make sure that when you're studying in school, don't study just to put the check mark in the box and be able to say, hey, I learned that, I'm ready for the test, and I'll forget it afterwards. Learn with the intention to apply what you've learned. And you'll be amazed at how your life will transform and the conversations that you'll have with people and the opportunities that it will create. All right? So just a little bit about myself. Come on, brother.
Man, how you guys put me last with all that? Wow. First of all, like I always tell you guys, my name is Tommy Richardson, and I just want to, again, applaud you guys. Man, you guys are so awesome. I think about the fact that you're here. You're here at an event to get better. I'm all about getting better. That's how all of us, we're probably the same way, being in education, we're all about getting people better. But here it is, you're investing in yourself. Whether that's you're a freshman, a graduate, or maybe you're the actual teacher of the class. You're here and you're trying to invest in yourself getting better. So again, I do applaud you on that. As we come back and kind of reverse it back and talk about myself, I am from Miami, born and raised. Like my fellow panelists here, I was one of those guys that got kicked out of a few schools. Got kicked out of 5 of them actually. Started in elementary. So education wasn't the thing that I thought I would end up in. However, through athletics, had an opportunity to go to a very prestigious school at the University of North Carolina, and was able to meet a bunch of awesome people, and they really taught me a little difference about how to approach education. I was approaching it all wrong. I was never prepared. I was never really going about it the right way. I was always bright enough to get by. Miami is a huge county. We're the 3rd largest district in the country here, And I was never really one of those ones that really kind of took it seriously until I got to University of North Carolina. And it really taught me the disciplines that I needed to be able to get in it. So that get better attitude that I had, I finally took it from the sports arena and I applied it to, my life in general. My grandfather, who raised me, my grandparents raised me, he would always talk about, son, get your education and you get a job. That generation, they always talked about, get your education and you get a job. That's not always true now, and I'm sure they'll echo those sentiments here. That's not always true, but my grandfather really believed in it. And here it is, he only had a 5th grade education, but he read and he would read the newspaper every day, tell us all about the newspaper and tell us what's going on in the world. And he ended up having his own business and, and doing everything and taking care of not only his kids, but his kids' kids. 11 of us was in the house. So I always was like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this education thing because Granddaddy said, And now that I've been in it, I went and got my master's in educational leadership and working on a PhD in higher education and educational leadership as well. I'm a vice principal now, which I would have never imagined. Taught for 9 years. Was a college football coach at the University of North Carolina for 2 years. So I got an opportunity to see not only what high school and what education could give to me. I really got an opportunity to see what I can give back to it because, again, in Miami, there's a bunch of me's. There's a bunch of hims. And it's really a melting pot of people that, publicly that people give up on. So I want you to look to each other and ask each other, and again, I'm assuming you're in the education panel, I want you to really ask each other, are you sure you want to get into education? You got to do it. You got to do it. You got to turn to somebody and say, are you sure you want to get into education? Sure. And I say that because you are really committing to. I know. I love that. I love that. Yeah. Somebody ain't sure. Yeah. They're not quite sure. And I'll tell you this because you're really committing to a public service. Whether you're in the private sector of education, if you're in the nonprofit sector of education, it doesn't matter. You're still committing to getting somebody else better. You're committing to getting somebody's daughter better, somebody's sons. You're committing, and I taught special ed for 6 of the 9 years. So you're really talking about, going above and beyond for these people that a lot of times we call them the disenfranchised. So think about that and really think about what you're trying to do when you get better. Because again, if it's not about getting people better, there's other professions that you can get in and make a lot of money. But I really enjoy educating and coaching people because I love getting them better.
All right. We'll put y'all together for this wonderful panel. Woo! I'm going to kind of veer off and throw the questions away because since education is my passion, I don't really need to ask more questions. I want to ask 2 questions because I know the panel, this panel was, you're not going to find more expertise, and I've been doing this since the inception, than we have on this panel. And so I want to ask 2 questions that are probably going to look almost polar opposites, but the first question I want to ask is, how do we eradicate the stereotype of education being the default kind of profession, that people only code because they don't know anything else to do, and that kind of being a stereotype and harming quality? And then the flip side of that is how do we get the next generation of teachers to be more culturally aware? And not just ethnically and culture, but just culturally aware of understanding the dynamics that people come from various places and how we utilize where they come from to be the place to take them off. So how do we engage that wherever you are, whether you're in the college Well, we talking about from university level all the way down to elementary. How do we kind of engage these questions in the education industry?
I can tell you just from the stereotype piece of it, what I'm seeing is education is changing. Instructors are no longer just going through the education process and then they're going into the classroom and just being directive and saying, here's what you gotta learn. Universities are bringing in people from the outside that are in those respective fields, that have the bumps and bruises, so to speak, of actually practicing that, and they're bringing them in. And we're finding a lot of people are developing, and moving into some graduate studies and getting their masters and even their PhDs. And it's not just reserved for researchers anymore. You're starting to see students being life students and getting those degrees. And universities are pulling those individuals in. And you're starting to see a little bit of a mind change. I think students are starting to get more excited about, well, you've done it. So I want to study and I want to learn from you. So you're seeing this migration from the teacher being somewhat of a distant, authoritative figure to now a collaborative partner. Like, I don't have students. I have business partners or human resource consultant partners in my class. So I'm seeing those type of activities amongst a wide array of universities that are changing the mindset of teaching and educators as not just academic, but practicing individuals that can provide some real life knowledge so that when you go out there, it's not a surprise. It's like, well, I learned that. Emotional intelligence? Well, I took an assessment on that. I learned what I'm good at and what I'm not good at, and I've learned how to talk about things that are sensitive without getting upset and giving people the benefit of the doubt. I learned that in school. I learned about what my gifts are and how to use those and how to leverage those. So I'll tell you, that's kind of my thought on that.
I think because my organization was really founded on this idea to try to destigmatize the teaching profession. We've all heard those who can't teach. I mean, you've heard that. Those who can't teach, right? Everybody wants their kid to have a great teacher, but nobody wants their kid to be that great teacher, right? We hear that. We see it. I see it every day. He sees it. It's in our culture. It's permeated. One of the things that we're doing to try to change that and have a paradigm shift is I know that I had a lot of friends that were like, first gen, for example, who went to college or first to go to college. You were the first person to go to college. And I remember my mom was like, what? You're going to go to UCLA to be a teacher? Like, oh, come on. You're going to be making how much money? You're going to be struggling. You're the first person. You have financial duties, right? Like, especially as a first generation to go to college, you have this responsibility. Not only do you personally feel like you have to come back and give back to your family, but you have this also, you're probably the biggest breadwinner in your family too, right? And so going into teaching doesn't sound very lucrative. And so some of the things that we're doing is, there's a lot of false stigmas. There's a lot of ways that you can definitely, aside from financially, really, really grow within the teacher profession now. And it also matters how you go into the teaching profession. Nowadays, we have organizations that are training you for 6 weeks and throwing you into the classroom. Well, guess what? 22,000 teachers who started in August will be out by June and never go back, right? So we're training people to go into teaching like if, a mechanic needs more certification to get into the classroom, really, to start working on a car, but why not a teacher? So we really need to asking the right questions about, it's not that great teachers aren't in the classroom and don't want to stay, it's that we're not providing you the support and resources to stay, to get into the classroom. So my coalition, what we do is we provide these extensive trainings early on in high schools, in elementary schools. We partner with schools so that we have people coming in to talk about the teaching profession. We have people coming in to talk about, a lot of the things that we do are like equity-based, right? So do you know that 60% of teachers in the United States are white women, right? 8% of teachers right now are Latino, right? But what does our population look like? Not like that, right? So what does it mean? There's actual research now that says that a person of color teaching you does not only impact students of color, it impacts everyone. Diversity impacts everyone, right? So the way that we can, I think for you in college, one of the ways that you can really start to look at that, how many of you have thought about teaching before? Wow, I've never been in a room. I've never been in a room where this many hands goes up, and I'm in rooms all the time, right? This is what I do, right? So I was just like moved away. I was just like, my mind was blown right now. But just to see that, right? How many of you will actually get through the door though through teaching? I was reviewing applications and interviewing folks for the Johns Hopkins Graduate School of Education. That's where I started recruiting. I was recruiting folks from 13 states, and I started to recruit in Puerto Rico because we had no bilingual teachers, and we need bilingual teachers, right? And so what I started doing when I was recruiting in Texas is everyone was telling me I needed to go to a career fair and pass out a flyer. How many of you in here have gone to a career fair to get a job before? Yep. Right? But that's where teacher credentialing programs are going. That's where school districts are going. That's where teacher, these are teacher prep programs are going. Who are they meeting then? People who know that you can go to a career fair and actually get a job, right? This is stuff that as a first generation student, I didn't know. I never went, right? So why are we recruiting them, right? So what organization does is we go into your spaces. We give you the power to organize your community around these issues. And instead, like 2 nights ago, I was at UCLA. Instead of going to a career fair, I did a resume workshop. I did an equity workshop on how to find your mission-driven career, like how to really cultivate your passion. Because a degree doesn't mean anything. You can give you a degree, but nobody teaches you how to find your passion, your life purpose. And I think what teaching does with going into education, what everybody on here will tell you, that this is our life work. There is a difference between a career and your life work. The hard part is how do you merge both? How does your life work become your career, right? And like the last question that you asked was, are you sure you want to go into education? That is a real question. And if you don't know, if you're thinking you want to teach, here's some things that you can do. There are organizations like AmeriCorps programs, City Year programs, on your campus, Jumpstart, Peer Health Exchange, different organizations are already going into the classroom and working with urban youth. Trust me, go in there for at least 5 hours a week and you will get an idea if you want to teach or not, right? You won't waste your time and you won't waste those students' time because they're not guinea pigs for you to go in there and just try it out. Teaching is not a, let me see if this is for me. Try it out before. There are a lot of other ways that you can do that.
Oh yeah, so, I'm on the hiring side now, so when you think about destigmatizing the actual career that is education, you got to really market it the right way. So she mentioned City Year, Teach for America. Being that we're in the urban, area, we really utilize our TFA, Teach for America programs. We really utilize our City Year programs. But when you start talking about it being a default, which was the question, there's really, that's like and I don't want to get political. But when it comes to education and public education in specific, there is somewhat of a misnomer. I don't want to call it an attack, but it's something similar to it. But there's a disconnect, great word. There's a disconnect with where our country seems to be going and where we might need to be going. Because, again, even and I know I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but even our doctors, our lawyers, our politicians, they have to be educated, and even if they go to private school teachers don't make as much as public school teachers.
A lot of them aren't credentialed.
Yeah, and they don't have the proper credentials to be teaching you. However, the stigma is, is this a default? So what we have to do is train them properly. There has to be a better screening process. But there also has to be some kind of task force that's really put out there to really go ahead and start marketing it the right way. Because it's going to be a little different. Learners are learning differently now. We're finally really pushing that the right way. The reason I got kicked out of a lot of schools, I didn't know this at the time, but I noticed after, was, I really had some emotional behavior disorder. I was really off the wall, bouncing. You see, I'm still like that now. But now I get to motivate people that way, So there's different ways that we're actually learning the differences of the learners that we have, and we're being specific to them. We're understanding how EQ ties into it. Emotional intelligence ties into not just an IQ thing. There's distance learning programs that we are starting to cultivate. So the FVL, the virtual schools are really taking over. So we're going to have different ways, but we can't be nervous about that. We have to embrace that. And the more that you can make yourselves aware of those things, culturally aware of just, okay, how this learner is gonna be different. You know, being culturally aware of what they have to deal with culturally, you know, before they're even there. When I was a teacher for 9 years, I got a lot of those bad students, or a lot of the emotionally disturbed students, or the intellectually disturbed students. And first I have to meet them where they at. I can't teach you anything until I know what you're going through. Did you eat last night? You know, do you got something wrong with your mom, your dad? Are you homeless? You know, so I gotta learn that now. And I'm looking for, on the hiring side, I'm looking for somebody that's gonna go that extra route. I'm looking for a servant leader. I'm the type of principal, I'm gonna be wiping down tables and taking out garbage cans. You know, I work with my custodial staff and my security staff more than I even work with my faculty, because I realize that a clean building is important. I realize that the food that they're getting is important. A lot of them in Miami, they only come to school for breakfast, which is free for everybody, and lunch, which is free for about 80% of our students. So we have to make sure we're meeting them where they at. And that's in the profession, destigmatizing it as much as we can globally. And we have to understand culturally, it's all a part. It's a melting pot. The diversity on this panel, the diversity in this room, the diversity in this conference, it's a melting pot. We are a melting pot. The United States was started as a melting pot, and we have to continue to understand that.
Let me, Shafali, we grew up at Long Beach State, being involved in student leadership, student government, all those kind of things. And you talk on how just being a part of student government and student leadership kind of leads us into this area of education. Not always, because everybody thinks education is only classroom, when there is so many other avenues that impact education and impact how we begin to set policy. You can talk about that, and then Sharon, I want to throw at you. Can you talk about that student? Because there are ladies in here, there are people in here who have a passion for education. How do you reach that student that seems unreachable? Because you're a pretty big dude, deep voice. It's very different than a young lady who's looking at a student who's bigger than them. Voice is not as deep. How do we connect to others that I can't stand you. I'm really trying to be serious. How do we connect to others? And not even saying that, I'm talking about how do we connect to others culturally, or just trying to find out where they're at. How do we connect in 50 minutes?
Okay.
Or 55 minutes?
You, ladies first?
I've been thinking, when you posed the last question, I was thinking about this because in higher education, in an ideal world, it's different. When you are teaching at a college or a university, it's because you're a leader in your field. It's because you're relevant in your field. You have published, you have shown, you have, you're doing research that's important, and you're coming back to teach. That's not always what happens, and more institutions aren't hiring full-time teachers, and you've got adjuncts working one class at 4 different schools all over the Southland, like driving out to the University of Laverne and then coming to Long Beach State and then whatever. And when you think about the kind of life that gives someone, and then you think about how tired they must be when they're in the classroom with you, you're not getting the best education. So that's just one note on that piece. For me, I majored in art. And I mean, a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Drawing and Painting is about as unmarketable as you can get. So, and there's always this rhetoric of like, you know, you just have to focus on the arts, you just have to be in the studio, you just have to be doing that work. And, you know, anything else that you do outside of that is just distracting. And the only people who have ever been discovered making their work in the studio are old white men. That's it. It didn't ever happen for anyone else, not women, not people of color, right? So there's that. I ended up in student leadership kind of by accident, initially at RCC because I was in the art club, and then I was in the interclub council, and then I sort of did other things and came to Long Beach, met our friend Ula, talked me into running for office. But the CSU is really special in that Associated Students is incorporated. It's a nonprofit 501c3, so while you're getting sort of government experience, you're also getting nonprofit experience, you're learning how to lead. The CSU is really, has a legacy of shared governance, which means that students, staff, faculty, and administrators have a seat at the table, a voting seat at the table, and you get to have, an opportunity to represent students and do that. And so that was what I got to do. I was president at Cal State Long Beach 10 years ago, and those opportunities, the opportunities to meet people, the opportunities to have a seat at the table, the opportunities to have access to what was going on behind the scenes and be able to either say this is what students are feeling about this, or go back to students and say this is actually a good thing, it's not something we need to be up in arms about, or this is something we need to organize against. That's an opportunity I will be grateful for the rest of my life. But what happened is that I ended up meeting people who were invested in my success because they appreciated working with me. I wasn't graduating when I finished my term, and so I was sort of given a job on campus, and I did it in the art department. And I said, what would you, if I could work for you and it wasn't coming out of your budget, what would you have me do? And they sort of met and came back and they said, we think you'd be good at alumni relations and development. Development's fundraising. And I was like, why? But I ended up just kind of doing this thing, researching, learning more about it, and then, I was still involved in other things, but all of those, every single job, down to like working for the Obama campaign. And I went to Nevada. I was unemployed. I graduated in 2008. That was painful. And then I got really angry about Sarah Palin, and I was like, called up Uduak. I was like, how do I get on the campaign? In Vegas, North Las Vegas. But that, like paid internships, unpaid internships, bar work, the first sort of permanent full-time job I had at Otis College of Art and Design, working in Cal State Long Beach and now at the Chancellor's Office, every single thing that I have done professionally, that thread goes back to being a student leader. And that thread goes back to doing things outside of the classroom. Any teacher that's telling you that you need to focus 100% on being in the classroom and not doing extracurricular activities is doing you a disservice, because life doesn't work that way. Even if you get a job, then what? Then you have to deal with parents that are sick. You have to deal with a family, children, things that are going on in the world, a broken car, whatever it is. Doing other things outside of the classroom helps you to manage the sort of real world, which is that you're never just focused on one thing. You're always doing multiple things, and life is throwing horrible things at you on a regular basis, even if you've got things that are bringing you joy. And so for me, those opportunities to sort of be a student and affect policy are some of my proudest accomplishments. And so 10 years later, coming full circle, being at the Chancellor's office, not being a student protesting, but being a manager, and getting to be in a room with people. And I feel really lucky about the time that I'm there. I'm in the room with people of color that are leaders, that are changing how we're trying to do education in the CSU. That just feels like the biggest privilege. And I don't know how to talk about this all day, but I'll leave it there.
Well,
Leadership is leadership is leadership. And she brings up such a fabulous point that these type of organizations, it's not about saying I was part of a leadership club, but the skills that you learn, networking, building relationships, learning how to fail and get back up again, learning to make mistakes and people calling you out on it, being able to build up, how do you have sensitive conversations with people when they're wrong? How do you learn to listen first and then seek to be understood.
That's a huge
You
one.
know,
Listen first.
yeah, you know, seek to understand, then to be understood. Those things come with getting involved with organizations that provide these things. I can't tell you how many jobs and opportunities I've had by just being part of a group and that kind of thing. And it wasn't because I needed to be a leader, but just the traits that you gain by being around an environment that will help you be a leader in whatever field. And it doesn't matter what your degree is. If you possess some great skills, people are going to want to hire you. If you put yourself in front of people enough, somebody's going to say, you know what, that person's got a little bit of game over there. Yeah, I don't care what their bachelor's degree is, and their communication was outstanding. Let's have a talk. Get out there.
You got the skills and you built relationships.
Amen.
And I see this happen a lot of times. People go straight to get their education. They have no relationships and don't understand. You're just a piece of paper that somebody's going to look at. And what I've learned is when we was in student government, being at events like you're at now, you're building relationships. People are going to get to hear you. People are going to get to know your name. And then you're able to understand. Then you're able to make yourself show the uniqueness of who you are. Because again, Tommy down there is going to see there's a bunch of people graduating who's going to want that job. But what makes you stand out more to say, you know, this is a person? And for some of us, it's been different. I know my first job in education, I got it just because I was a part of a Greek letter organization. AKA saw who I was and said, I'm going to give you a chance. No, I'm a signal. I don't know about no loop or nothing. I don't know about no alpha stuff. I don't know. But you know what? Honestly, tell you the truth.
My organization was birthed out of Greek organization.
Was it?
Yeah, like
Sigma
it helps.
it would take
Well,
you to
Latino
the-
sorority.
Oh, I got you. No, but honestly, tell you the truth, as much as we would fight among and we would do, when we got up into education, it was only 3 brothers at LAUSD. It was an Alpha, it was a Kappa, it was a Sigma, and we was the black brothers on the campus. And guess what? Forget about all what we was doing. And we really have to learn how to network, and we utilized our organizations to be that network. So that's all I'm telling you to do is please do not be a hermit, an educational hermit. You gotta get out, get involved, and it's gonna do. Sherrod, after Sherrod get done saving our souls, we're gonna open up the floor. Sherrod was one of the original. He didn't say it, but he's one of the original Freedom writers. I don't know if you've ever seen it. Have y'all ever seen the movie Freedom Writers?
Yes.
He's one of the. As much as he was a knucklehead, he's also one of the original Freedom writers. So.
I'm damaged. Okay? I'm damaged. 99% of your students, if you go into education, are going to be damaged. Okay, 100% of the students that you... No. I had to learn that. There's damage everywhere. We don't want to admit it. We want to feel that everybody's okay. We actually, as educators, want to exist inside of our bubble and say that we did the best that we could. And thus, we let a lot of our kids slip through the cracks. You don't have to have a big voice like me. There was a 4'11", 76-year-old lady that if she moves towards me, I'm going to jump. My friend. There is a 5'4½", little chubby lady with short hair. She turned around. All right, Mom, cool. Back up. It is not about your stature as much as it is about your consistency. We are dealing with damaged kids, and the consistency that they experience is damage. And they're experiencing from the people that are supposed to show them love and that are supposed to care about them. Therefore, when they come to your classroom, who the F are you to tell them that you care about them? You didn't even make them. You don't live in their house. You're not responsible for feeding them. Therefore, when you say, hey, little Johnny, I really care about you. I'm sorry, teacher. Hey, Jamal, Kike, I really care about you, my guy. I really need you to get this done. You don't care about me because the people who made me don't care about me. The people who live on my street don't care about me. So who are you? You have to show them who you are. I didn't get my job because I was the best teacher. I teach algebra. I was a sociology major with a minor in history. I love telling the story. I love telling the story, behind the dates. I don't know. Now, these is numbers. I didn't get anything higher than a D in mathematics after the 6th grade. That includes college. Yet I'm an algebra teacher. One day I decided I was going to teach myself algebra. And I taught myself algebra, and I realized that it's the exposure to the information, this exposure to the healthy success that's going to build and create our kids and put them in prominent positions. The only difference between a kid from South Central, the Bronx, Dirty Jersey, Pahokee, Florida, Dade County, to the Hamptons and South Orange County and Sandy, the difference is their exposure to a healthy success. The majority of these kids in our inner cities are exposed to success that is damaging to them, doesn't have a longevity. When they are talked to by counselors, they're encouraged to do things that are menial. They're not encouraged to do things that are going to bring them wealth later on in life. You know what? I'm a football guy. We're in track in college. I say about 108% of the black athletes are sociology majors. Which is sociology, psychology. What are you gonna do? I don't know. I want to help people. You've all heard that before. I want to do something where I help people. But then they don't know that you have to get a doctorate pretty much to be able to accumulate some wealth, to give yourself some longevity in life, so you're not stressed out, so your family's not frustrated, so it's not hard for you to maintain a healthy marriage, because 50% of marriages end in divorce, and a higher percent of that is because of finances, and they don't tell you that. I tell my kids, education is in everything that you do. I don't need no education. All right. This algebra class, right? Yeah, whatever. Okay. If you mess up in my class on some fractions, right? You can come in my class and retake the test. You mess up on the street in your fractions, the dope man will show you what forfeits is. Because there are stories in the neighborhood where you get your fingers cut off because you math with them. If you don't want to come in my class and learn about your history, you're doomed to repeat. They say those that don't learn about their history are doomed to repeat it. Then when you are standing and facing that wall in the county jail, the jailer will remind you of your past. You are educated in everything that you do. Even that football player has to be taught how to catch the ball. He has to be taught how to run the route. That's why the coach is so important. The gangsters teach you how to throw up signs. They teach you how to live. They teach you what to look for. You're being educated. But the education that you're receiving is damaging. So when you meet your kids, if you choose to go into education, you meet them with consistency over and over. Over you. Teach them that you are a person of your word over and over and over again, and you don't highlight the negative stuff that goes on with them. We are so quick to send kids out of the class. Get out. I've done it. Get out. Get the boys get on my face today. No. Come back tomorrow. Let's start over. We're so quick to dismiss them. They're looking for that. The kids crave discipline. They want somebody to say, please stay, I need you here, I want you here, because they're so used to being discarded. Don't discard them. Hold on to them. Embrace them. Literally stand at your door and hug them. When you get to high school, I suggest a side hug.
Right.
Hey, you over there. Not gonna have me on TV. But let them know that you care about them, that you care about their education. Okay, when you do that, the response is totally different. You ain't gonna have some knuckleheads. They have A's and F's for a reason. Somebody has to pass, somebody has to fail. The difference is in the good teachers, the good teacher doesn't decide who the failures are when they meet them. The good teacher says, if you fail my class, it's because you wanted to, because I'm gonna do everything In my power come hell or high water, as Papa Pope said, and I am the hell and high water. I'm here for you. And it's not always going to be easy. And it's not always going to be fun. And it's going to hurt. But at the end, there's something better for you. Don't accept what society gives you. Don't let the media tell you this is all you can do. Rap, throw a ball, catch a ball, crick walk, or twerk in a video. You can do that later, after work. I said it, but just do it after work. But you have to meet them. You have to want to be there. The kids that 60% are white women,
60.
they don't look like the kids. And they don't want to be there a lot of times because it's uncomfortable for them. And the kids pick up on that. So you meet them, and you be consistent, and you love them. That's how it happens. That's how you get kids to grow. In anything that you do, it's all about relationships. You don't converse with them. You married, or you're dating, and you don't converse with your significant other. How long do you believe that relationship is going to last? They're just kids. I just have to teach them. They need to shut up and
You just messed up this girl.
Yes, it's over now. I ain't talking to you in 37 seconds. You ain't text me the whole time I've been in this meeting. It's funny because it's true. So develop your kids. Talk to them, talk with them, develop them. Don't talk at them. There are some times where grandma is right. Shut up. Sit your behind there. I don't say
You
never.
didn't tell me to hit the kid, did you?
No. But I don't say never, but it's rare that I'll kick a kid out of my classroom. I will make it uncomfortable for you to do the wrong thing. I'll take your desk away. I'll make you write holding your papers like this. I'll make you stand up, stand in the back. You're doing your work. I ain't doing no work, then you won't leave. I'll call their parents on speakerphone. Because if you got these hood kids, they probably got hood mamas. And nobody wants their mama on speakerphone. But whatever I can to get you to understand that I'm not turning my back on you. That I'm here to support you. Consistency, guys. Because he said relentless learning, relentless consistency. Stick with them. Sometimes you got to fight them to save them from themselves.
All right. All right. Give him another chance. Okay, give him another chance. Give him another chance. The day ain't over with yet. We hopefully he'll call you.
He got
the day's over.
if this
I got 10 minutes. All right. I got 10 minutes to ask some questions. I need questions. You got questions. I see you, sis. You're gonna be my first one. Anybody else got any questions? 2, 3, 4. I got 4 questions. All right, if you can stand up, tell us where you're from, ask your question, and then we'll move on to the next. I'm just gonna ask, before you get down, I'm just gonna ask the panel, everybody doesn't have to answer the question, so we can make sure we can get as many as possible.
Okay,
Yes.
awesome. Hello everyone, my name is Tanisha. I'm from Dominguez Hills. I grew up in Compton and Hawthorne. Woo. Yes, Lawndale. So I appreciate.
Oh, you grew up in Lawndale, that's the good part.
No, I went to Lawndale. I was living in Compton, so.
Oh, you okay, I got you.
I resonate with a lot of your stories. I was expelled from preschool actually, so your 2 stories about being expelled several times really resonated with me, and how you all were mentioning statistics. Statistics are showing right now that African American children are being expelled and suspended at higher rates in children of color as well. And so when we say bad kids, when we say troubled kids, they're coming from communities. So I wanted to know how you expand your leadership from outside the classroom into community, or for your entire school as well. Like, what are some things that we can do to strengthen leadership on those levels?
Like restorative justice?
Restorative justice.
Or like as a teacher?
I was thinking whatever tips that you have as what things that we can do as leaders, expanding from outside of the classroom. Because a lot of what I heard today was inside of the classroom, how we're managing behaviors, but how we can strengthen our communities.
Don't be afraid to correct. politely, depending on where you're at. But don't be afraid to correct wrongdoing. You say bad things happen when good people turn the other way. I have a disdain for the N-word. I hate it. I hate it. I hate hearing it. I don't care if it's in the music, even though it's some of the best rap song. I hate it. My kids on campus know that I hate it. When I worked in a summer program, and I have again, I'm the director of track and field and cross country. Whenever I hear it, it's 50 push-ups for everybody. They start correcting each other. If you don't accept bad behavior as a whole, then you'll stop receiving bad behavior as a whole. Okay, don't run away from it. Don't just ignore it, because that's what you get a lot of, oh, that's just kids these days. No, that's unacceptable. I don't allow that. I don't appreciate that. That's disrespectful. I walked through campus today. Hey, man, that's Mr. Moore. Be quiet. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Moore. I ain't trying to do no push-ups because of you. We'll have a lot of athletic kids running around. But it's just not accepting it. Not accepting the behavior, and also being the role model yourself. You know, people learn from what they see, so you show them what positivity is.
I would say you have to always question, like, this country, right, was taken. This country that, as we know it, was created by and for people who were not us. So these systems of education are not always for everyone. And they don't make sense for everyone. And that goes from kindergarten, from preschool, all the way through university. And you always have to sort of question the kinds of things that you hear, like, well, my class just weeds out all the people that shouldn't be here. It's not a good method to sort of throw kids into university and just be like, well, if they're supposed to make it, they're gonna make it. That's not actually how it works. And those students who just make it, they had support coming up. They had money. They had lineages. You know what I mean? And so I think for those of you who get into education, especially if you have opportunities to be in leadership, whether that's just sitting on a committee while you're also working in the classroom or getting into administration, constantly questioning the kinds of things that we do and the kinds of, I don't know what the word is that I'm looking for, but questioning the way that we do things and really forcing people to look at how they perceive other people, because the black kids that are getting suspended, they're not doing anything different than these little white kids. They're not. And it's the truth. And the other thing is, I'm gonna just say this, like, as people of color, it's not just on white folks to make these changes, it's on us, because as an Indian, like, there is rampant anti-blackness in the Asian community. So we also have to look at ourselves and our own biases as we sort of like move through these institutions, and just always be willing to look at something and say, why isn't this working for this group of people? If it's not working for everyone, and it's not like there's a one-size-fits-all system, but if it's not working for everyone, what are the changes that we can sort of do? And that's, I didn't really get a chance to talk about this, but the thing that's so exciting to me about being at the Chancellor's office right now, alumni relations, people sort of think of that as like homecoming and calling you up for money and whatever else. My second day on the job, I got to sit down with the person who's the senior strategist for academic success and talk about what they're doing with the graduation initiative. 10 years ago, the conversation was, we need to put a unicap on these kids and get them out. Well, that would have hurt me. So the conversation now is, they were looking, you know, he mentioned Georgia State as a model that closed the achievement gap. But what are we doing as institutions that students can't graduate? We are dropping students from their classes for owing less than $50 in library fees. And then they have to take those classes again and pay for them. That could break someone. We are, you know, we're not supporting the remedial education thing. I don't know how many of you guys saw that in the news. Look that up. Look at what the CSU is doing with remedial education. They're not just pushing people through college and like not educating them. They found out remedial education wasn't working.
Yeah.
So we're going to put everyone in 100 level classes and then say, okay, what extra support do you need? You need weekly meetings with your advisor. You need one-on-one tutoring. You need a group study group or whatever. And so they're actually looking at what we are doing as an institution that is making it harder for people to get through school. So all that to say, always be asking questions and always be questioning how you're taught to do something and how you can do it better.
Can I ask one more question? They told me I'm out of time. I got
Sorry.
one more question. One more question. Do you want to?
Yeah,
Yeah, you got one more question. Sis, I will also tell you, everybody in here should take a grant writing class.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, what you're going to have to do is get them, come on, stand up. What you're going to have to do is if you know them kids can't eat, you better know how to write to the food bank
Right.
and get some food over there to them. If you got to meet their needs in the best way, the school is not giving you more money. The chancellor don't want to give more money. You got to go find those areas where you can. So I will tell every teacher to take a grant writing class. Yes, ma'am.
hello, my name is Michelle Dugas. I'm from Inglewood, and I'm currently a student here at the 8. So you spoke on competent teachers. I'm really big on competent teachers. I wouldn't be where I am without the few competent teachers that I have. And I'm curious, what measures do you or your organization take to ensure that the teachers that you're hiring or working with are indeed competent?
Yeah, good question. So I'll do this really quick. One of the reasons, or one of the things, in order so there's a screening process that I have in order for you to be part of the coalition as an organization. And so whether you're a traditional school district, say you're Inglewood Unified, for example. If you're Inglewood Unified, I have a meeting with you, you want to be part of the coalition, I'm going to help you get more teachers of color into your school district. I'm very firm about saying I'm not going to partner with anybody who is not currently creating systems within their own school district that are supporting teachers of color specifically. So what kind of teacher training do you have? And by teacher training do you have, I mean there's a separate, cohesive, comprehensive way to support teachers of color in that space. So that space looks very different. One of it could be the way that you're training them to develop the curriculum, the way that you're supporting them around integrating students with special needs into their classroom. Does that school district have somebody specifically working on intervention? Is somebody specifically working on special education? And so I ask a lot of questions before coming in. It's like an interview that I have with the school district in order to be even a member, a part of it. So if I'm going to be recruiting teachers, I want to make sure that I'm being very conscious about where they're getting placed, because there's a lot of, and we can, this is a whole other topic around charter schools and traditional school districts, but my organization is the only organization in the country that has both of them at the table at the same time, right? So we are all, it's this idea of like, okay, we've got two different means of getting into an end, right? Two different means of what it means to be quality education, but we all work in Inglewood, right? For example, there's a charter school in Inglewood teaching my cousins, and there's a charter school, and there's a traditional school district in Inglewood that I went through, right? At the end of the day, we just need better teachers. Like, enough of the politics, enough of the talking, I can't work with this, I can't work with them, like, let's just get better teachers. And so, one of those things is that we do a lot of, like teachers would come in to the coalition, so we have a lot of members that are teachers, and they provide extensive coaching and support to school districts that does not currently exist. So we also are the consultants, right? Like a school can be like, hey, we need more diversity, I'm a diversity inclusion consultant. They will bring me in to assess the organization, what is not happening in the organization to be more inclusive of the people of color, and then we would create those spaces there. So that's what a diversity inclusion consultant does. We just create more inclusive, equitable spaces, and I do that for school districts and nonprofits, if that makes sense. Did I kind of answer it?
All right, put your hands together for this wonderful. You have two homework assignments. Number one is the people in this room, these are going to be your educators. These are going to be the people you're going to work with, your colleagues. You should get to know all of them. You should begin to move around this room, getting to know, make sure you network with them. Also make sure that you network with this wonderful panel. Make sure you talk. Just know you can't tell your whole life story because there's about 100 other people who want to talk to them too, all right? So just make sure that you begin to engage and have substantive dialogue. If you begin to engage that way, all right?
Can I share my contact info, or really quick, so they can connect with us after?
Yeah, however you want to.
So every Monday and Wednesday, I give resume tips and cover letter tips for free on my Instagram direct story. I also review resumes and raffle them off if you watch my story every month. I'm a career coach, so this is like part of what I love to do, specifically for first gen students of color. You can follow me, it's my name, Stephanie Castellanos _. You can also go to please follow my organization's website because we go to your campus. The chances are we're going to be in 20 states providing free training within the next 6 months on your campus. And so if you want a workshop on your campus, add my nonprofit organization, send us a message, and we will come to your campus for free and do a workshop. The organization is called official_C4DE Coalition for Diverse Educators. Official_C4DE. And C4DE.org has all of our partners. And if you want a job at any of the partners that you see on there, I will directly connect you to the person that's hired you. So you just got to go to our website and see where it is.
All right,